All right, today we're going to be diving into Den of Nalorakk, talking about the route that I suggest for Pug players. Now, I had a lot of success running this route on PTR, upwards of like 15s, 16s. In 18s, there are some mobs that you might want to start avoiding. I'm going to be doing an advanced kind of route video in the future along with commentaries. So, this is definitely a dungeon that can be probably more overwhelming this season for tanks because it isn't as linear as some of the other dungeons, like King's Rest, for example, or Temple of Sithralis. So I'm going to have this shared down below, so feel free to check it out. But let's start a new route and kind of talk through each of the pulls. So in this first area, you have to get 6 total offerings to unlock the first boss. Now, the location of those are going to be located here. This is a berry bush. You have a berry bush back here. You have a fishing hole right here, as well as right here in front of the boss. You have double apple barrels here. Then you have a single apple barrel here and a single one up here. So, the idea is that you need to be able to get to 6 of these. Now, the caveat is that the berry bushes, if you happen to let the keen-eyed striker fully cast it doesn't actually have it in MDT, but they have an ability called Scavenge. If they scavenge, it will remove the berries from play, meaning that you're going to have to pull other stuff to get your resources. So the idea of this route is that you're not going to let this happen, and if you do, you're going to have to like make some adjustments. I also like going to the right side. I got a lot of I don't want to say hate, but I got like a lot of pushback on PTR whenever I went down to the right-hand side because people were like it's harder. But the thing is, like, hard is kind of subjective and it's based on what you pull, and there's definitely ways to optimize your pulls in this area. But this is a pug route, and we're pretty much going to try to simplify this as best as we can. Like most dungeons, you're going to want to start off by getting a big lust pull. So I recommend trying to stop this keen-eyed striker, get this berry bush, and then you're going to be pulling these gatherers, this bear pack in the corner, and grabbing this Spirit of Hunger, and you can grab this Eagle for good measure. This Spirit of Hunger is not attached, so don't worry too much about it. So this is gonna get us our first offering, and then it's gonna be a pretty large pull. The priority, as you might have guessed, is going to be the Spirit of Hunger. They are going to spawn a Starvation Effigy, which reduces players' max health every time it successfully casts. Swap to this ASAP, and then it's going to do an AoE damage event called Feast of Misery, which also heals this. So things like Mortal Strike are going to be really powerful here, and also Funnel/priority damage is also going to be very good at going to the Spirit of Hunger. The Thornclaw Gatherers don't really do much. They just basically leave supplies on the ground, and they do like a little bit of a tank buster on the tank, which isn't a big deal. Now, the Matriarchs, on the other hand, the Bears, they only really melee until their nearby cubs die. When their nearby cubs die, they gain a 50% damage amp and a 50% movement speed buff for a minute, and it stacks. Now, this can be soothed. The other counterplay is just don't pull as many curious yearlings as you possibly can. So in this case, you're only going to have 2, and so this one single bear getting amped by 100% will not kill a tank if it's just auto attacks. Finally, the Keen-Eyed Strikers, all they do is they jump on a random player, leaving a dot. So it's really just healer issue. Pulling 2 is not a big deal. You can also technically drop this one if you really want to and pull it into a different pull. It's really up to you. I just figured get it in with Lust while the healer's powerful and your DPS are more powerful. Moving into the next pull, I like to grab this pack that's next to the little pond here, and then you can tag this Spirit of Hunger and pull it to this pack. Now, everything in this pack we've already talked about except the Tenders. Now, the Tenders cast Earth Bolt at random players doing nature damage, and they cast Healing Breeze, which applies a healing over time effect to all of the targets nearby. Now, I think the math ends up being 30% of their max health if this cast goes off. So, very, very important that you do not let Healing Breeze go off ever. Once that pack goes down, we're going to be grabbing this bear and this Spirit of Hunger. This bear's going to get pretty gnarly because it has 4 cubs next to it, and then we're going to have 1 caster, 1 gather, and then again a Spirit of Hunger. Now, once this pull 3 goes down, your DPS should click on the 2 apple barrels, and your healer or another DPS can go back and fish. Now, if someone wants to fish this up earlier, they definitely can. You can also come back later after you clear all the trash anyways, because you can just jump down in the river and then walk back up. Then what I like to do, it's very weird, but as a tank, you can run past this guy, and then you can pull this bear pack into this pack, and then you can also tag the Spirit of Hunger, and it'll like run in following you. So that's what I recommend doing here. And pretty much everything's the same except that there's 2 tenders now. So 2 casters you have to watch out for, specifically on the Healing Breeze cast. So make sure you're locking that down. And now, if you can count, this is going to give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of our offerings. And that's why I like doing this route down to the south, is because it makes it more natural. When you go up to the top, you clear all this trash, but it doesn't reward you with anything. So I like to have every pull at least clearing 1 or 2 offerings, and then you're ready to go on to boss. So that's how I like to do this first area. How you do this first area is up to you. I've seen some groups, let me just like start a new route, for example. I've seen some groups just like pull, they try to do like a really big first pull like this with Lust. Um, but the thing with this is like it doesn't give you any berries, and then clearing back down this way gets really awkward because you end up having to pull more spirits of hunger this way. So it's up to you what you pull, but basically, moral of the story is you want to end just shy of 30% count. So 29.36. Heading into the next area, what I like to do is I like to grab the thorn collar in the middle and pull it into this 2 pack, and then I run down the side. And you're going to have 2 tenders in this pull, 1 bird and 5 gatherers. So your floor space is going to be a little bit funky to play in, but this is going to be a pretty nice pull coming out of first boss. Again, random bleed getting applied, a couple of random bolts, and then just tank needs to watch out for the gatherers. Then what you're going to do is you're going to head across the bridge into this next area. So this area is kind of sketchy because there are a lot of these yearlings, but they're not marked in MBT. You have to be very careful on not pulling the yearlings in this area. So what I like to do instead is I actually like to run around them, avoiding most of the bears. So you can actually run through this pack and you can like loop through this way without pulling any of the bears. So what that's going to end up looking like is, oops, it's going to end up looking something like this. You're going to pull double Rumbler into another Rumbler plus Keen-Eyed Striker into double Frostfang. And then if you really want to, you can grab 1 bear. Now, the only thing I'm going to say about this is that these rumblers are a little scary because they gain this thing called Rumbling Ward, and when it's active, it's an absorb shield. When it's active, it'll obviously prevent them out from taking damage, and it'll do AoE damage until the shield is broken. I've seen some groups lust this pull as well, which was a pretty fine idea, but I find that this is going to be better for your healer to counter than it is trying to pull a bunch of bears and then your tank just being in misery. So these birds are a little bit further to the right. This bear is like tucked up into this corner. It's really hard to pull him. And you can avoid pulling this bear if you want to. Once that goes down, you'll be heading into kind of this harsh winter. There are safety zones in this space. So there's a safety zone here. I believe there's a safety zone here, here, and then like there's one like way up here. I think there's 4 zones total across the left-hand side. And that's what we're going to be utilizing to avoid the winds. So the first pull, I like to grab double Frostfang into Frigid Mauler, into Terra, Frigid Mauler, Glacial Revenant. The only thing that there's 2 things that are new in here. The Frigid Mauler does this thing called Frigid Roar that does it's a haste and speed reduction if it goes off. So this is a damage down, make sure you kick it. And then the Glacial Revenant applies a debuff to a player called Cryo Surge, which just does AoE damage to anyone inside of the circle. So all you have to do is spread out. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull all of these guys next to this like tree stump. Now, if you really want to, you can technically pull in some some extra Frostfang wolves if you'd like. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna do that here. So it's not attached to these Frigid Maulers, so don't worry. The only thing you have to be cautious about is the Avatar of Determination. It patrols up and down this road, so make sure you're not pulling them at an inopportune time. The next pull is going to be double wolves into Glacial Revenants, into Frigid Maulers, where then you plant on the 3rd X. So you're going to be playing here, and then you're going to be playing here. Now, I will say that if the winds are currently active, just you can definitely pull it back. Don't feel like you always have to push ahead because if you don't have movement speed, it's really hard to counter the winds. And then finally, you're going to pull Frostfang Wolves, Avatar of Determination plus Glacial Revenant and Terra, and you're going to okay, there's 2 options here. You can play it by itself in this final line of sight spot, which is really sketchy because of the Avatar of Determination, or you pull it all onto the Winter Squall, which will make it so you don't have to LOS, but it definitely makes it a little bit more tighter in terms of like space you have to work with, plus AoE damage from the Winter Squall. Now, the Avatar of Germination does a thing called Glacial Tomb, which roots every player until the roots are destroyed by damage. Now, obviously, root removals work, so Freedom, Tiger's Lust, etc. And then they also cast Pulverize, so they're trying to root you and then getting you stuck in their giant circle, which will do a ton of physical damage plus a stun. Now, in order to save time, this Winter Squall doesn't have a threat table and doesn't do anything besides just like pulsing AoE damage around itself. So that's why I like to actually run all of this inside of this circle and cleave it all down. Now, if you're a tank, it's best practice to stand to the side of one of like either side of the bridge. Don't stand in the direct middle because then the pulverize will force all of your players outside, which is bad. And then finally, you'll actually go into boss. So if you notice here, we are at 70.92%. So being at like 70% is pretty much perfect. So the rest of the run is going to be holding W down this bridge. So the first pack here, it's two casters. Actually, I guess it's, yeah, two casters plus a totem collar into the Grizzled Warbringer. The Grizzled Warbringer just does Primal Echo, just AoE damage and a short dot, plus a circles you have to dodge. The Mystics will cast Lightning Bolt and Arc Lightning, which is just a chain lightning, so kick whatever you can. And then finally, the Totem Collar will spawn totems, dealing damage. You'll want to swap to these as soon as they spawn. The next pull will be just by itself. It's going to be another Totem Collar plus a Beast Collar, or a Beast Master, I should say. All they do is they shoot the tank. It's just basically their auto attack, and then they'll also enrage themselves and their pet that increase their damage. And then the pets in this pull would be these saber fangs. So they just do. They used to fixate. I feel like they haven't fixed. I feel like I haven't seen them fixate, but um, supposedly they fixate. That's in the dungeon journal. You're going to then just do this one pack at a time. Everything we've talked about up to this point, you've already seen. They're just different variations of each pull. Now, don't get me wrong. In a pre-made group or a group that's comfortable, or if you're playing with a class that can group things a lot easier, like a Death Knight, for example, like a Blood Death Knight, feel free to like double up 13 and 14 or 14 and 15. Um, it's not super dangerous, but if you're good on your timer, you don't need to rush this bridge in this last area. And then last but not least, we're going to be pulling Loa Speaker Nanea. Now, Nanea is interesting because her RP starts, you can start her RP early by having someone run up the stairs really quickly. If you don't do that, just, it's fine. Like, you're just going to have to sit around and wait, which is not a big deal. The final mini boss is going to be pretty simple, in my opinion. She spawns Earthquake around two players. She spawns totems you want to swap to, and then you want to make sure that you're interrupting her lightning bolt. Besides that, not much to do. I'll be honest. But, that's it. That's Den of Nalorakk. This is, like, the simplest route that I could come up with that doesn't deviate too much, doesn't require any kind of skips. Now, there are a lot of areas you definitely can skip in. So, for example, like this last pack or this last area, you can walk around this first 3 pack, for example, which means you need to make up, 3.5%, 2.5% somewhere. There's also options to, like, skip a lot of trash in some of these areas or pull more trash in some of these areas. This is what I've come up with that I've had a lot of success with, and once you kind of get the rhythm of how you pull, especially the first area, the rest of it becomes really easy. Just remember that you need pretty much 70% counts, a little bit more than 70% count, ideally 71 when you're pulling the second boss, and as long as you have 70% count, you're gonna be chilling. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.